Tonight, you become an Oiran. Powerful, feared, desired in Edo, Japan. You wield quiet influence over the most powerful men. Your life unfolds in silk and ceremony, where every choice you make ripples through history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like a video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see who's joining us. Now dim the lights. Close your eyes and get comfortable. We're getting started. You are an Oiran in Edo, Japan, around the year 1750. If that term means nothing to you, here's the short version. You're the highest-ranking entertainer in a district called Yoshiwara, a walled area of the city dedicated entirely to art, music, tea ceremonies, and companionship. Think of it as a strange mix between a cultural center and a very expensive social club. You're not a geisha. That's a different profession that will become more famous later. You're something older, more complicated, and far more expensive. The morning light comes through paper screens in your room. Outside, you can hear Edo waking up, merchants shouting, cartwheels on stone paths, someone splashing water on the street to keep the dust down. It's calm, which is misleading because your life operates on a very specific kind of tension. You are one of the most celebrated women in this city, and also one of the most controlled. Let's unpack that. Yoshiwara was built in 1617 when the Tokugawa shogunate decided that if people were going to pay for entertainment, it should happen in one place where they could regulate and tax it. The district has walls, guarded gates, and about 2,000 women working inside. Most of them are in the lower ranks, regular entertainers who serve tea, play music, and keep parties lively. You are not in that category. You are an Oiran, one of perhaps 200 women who hold this title at any given time. There used to be an even higher rank called Taiyu, but the last one retired decades ago because maintaining that level of luxury bankrupted everyone involved. So now you're at the top. Your room reflects this status. The floor is covered in tatami mats made from woven rush grass. The walls have painted screens showing mountains and rivers. In one corner sits your shamisen, a 3-stringed instrument you've been playing since childhood. Next to it, a low table with brushes, ink, and paper for calligraphy. Everything here is expensive. Everything here sends a message. This is a woman of culture, education, and refinement. For a man to spend an evening in your company, attending a tea ceremony you're hosting, listening to you play music, having an intelligent conversation about poetry, costs about 1 to 2 ryo in gold. That's roughly what a skilled craftsman earns in an entire month. Some men spend 10, 20, even 50 ryo over months or years trying to win your favor. We're talking about the price of a small house for conversation and tea. Why would anyone pay that much? Because you offer something that doesn't exist anywhere else in this society. The right to say no. In feudal Japan, women don't get a lot of choices. Most women your age are married off to men, chosen by their families. They manage households. They raise children. They follow rules. They don't refuse anyone. You do. And that refusal is so rare, so valuable, that men will bankrupt themselves just to hear you say yes. Here's how the system works. A man can't just walk up and request your time. First, he needs an introduction from someone you already know and trust. Then he sends a gift, expensive silk, rare incense, fine jewelry. If you accept the gift, he's allowed to visit. On his first visit, you meet briefly. You evaluate him. Can he discuss poetry without embarrassing himself? Does he understand calligraphy? Can he hold an intelligent conversation? You're not looking for a lover. You're looking for someone who won't bore you to death. If he passes this test, he's invited back for a second visit. More gifts, more evaluation. By the third visit, if you still find him acceptable, he might be allowed to join your regular circle of guests. This process can take months. It can cost a fortune, and at any stage, You can end it by simply not responding to his next gift. No explanation required, no apology needed. This is power. Specifically, this is the kind of power that most women in 1750s Japan will never experience. Let's be clear about what this means. Samurai, warriors who can legally execute a peasant for showing disrespect, must bow to you and bring gifts if they want your attention. Wealthy merchants who control the rice trade and own buildings must wait weeks to learn if you find them interesting enough. And you, a woman in a society that gives women almost no formal rights, get to sit there and decide who is worthy of your time. It's absurd. It's also real. But here's the part that makes this complicated. None of this is free. Your room, your clothes, your shamisen, your lessons, the servants who help you dress, all of it is paid for by the house that employs you. And every expense is added to your debt. The kimono you wear today, which weighs about 20 kilograms and is decorated with gold thread, doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the house. You're borrowing it. The tea you drink, the ink you use, the coal that heats your room in winter, all recorded in a ledger. You earn money from the gifts men bring and from hosting events. But your expenses, which are controlled entirely by the house, are enormous. In a good month, you might earn 5 ryo. Your costs might be 4 ryo. You're making progress, but it's slow. And if you get sick, if a younger Oiran arrives and steals your popularity, if fashion changes and your style falls out of favor, the debt grows faster than you can ever pay it off. There is one escape route. A wealthy patron can buy out your entire contract, paying off your debt in one transaction and setting you free. This happens occasionally, not often. Most Oiran work into their 30s, slowly losing popularity as they age, eventually moving to lower ranks or leaving Yoshiwara with little money and nowhere to go. But today, right now, you are at the peak. Your face appears on woodblock prints sold across Edo. Poets write verses about you. When you walk down the main street of Yoshiwara in your full costume, 20 kilograms of embroidered silk, hair held in place by 24 ornamental pins, wooden sandals so tall you need attendants on both sides to keep you upright. The entire district stops to watch. You are famous. In a world where most women are anonymous, you are spectacularly visible. And visibility in this context is both power and prison. You can refuse a samurai. You can set fashion trends that ripple across the city. But you can't leave Yoshiwara without permission. You can't choose a different profession. You can't even take a walk outside the district gates without an escort and formal approval. You are the most celebrated woman in Edo, and also one of the most trapped. It's a paradox. But then again, most of history is built on paradoxes. Let's see how yours unfolds. Let's talk about how you actually spend your time, because it's not what most people assume. Your day doesn't start with parties or performances. It starts with work. Specifically, a kind of work that would exhaust most people before breakfast. You wake early, around dawn. The first thing you do is practice music. Not casual practice, serious, disciplined training on the shamisen. You've been playing this instrument since you were young, and by now your fingers know exactly where to press the strings, exactly how hard to pluck them to get the right tone. But you don't practice songs you already know. You practice new ones, more difficult ones, because standing still in this profession means falling behind. There are younger women coming up through the ranks, learning the same skills you learned years ago. If you stop improving, they'll overtake you. After music comes calligraphy. You sit at a low table with ink, brush, and paper. Your handwriting has to be perfect. Not good, perfect. When you write a letter to a potential guest, or compose a poem for an event, educated men will judge every stroke. If your characters are unbalanced, if your brush pressure is inconsistent, they'll notice. And they'll mention it to others. Your reputation isn't just about how you look or how you play music. It's about whether you can demonstrate mastery of classical arts that most men only study casually. Then poetry. You need to be able to compose verses on the spot, in classical forms, referencing works of literature that many of your guests have only heard about, but never actually read. This isn't showing off. This is the baseline. If you can't hold your own in a conversation about poetry, philosophy, or current events, you're not an Oiran. You're just someone wearing expensive clothes. All of this happens before most of the city is awake. By the time the sun is fully up, you've already put in 3 or 4 hours of practice, and you'll do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, because the moment you stop training is the moment someone else becomes more interesting than you. Around mid-morning, your attendants help you prepare for the day. And help you prepare is a misleading phrase, because what actually happens is closer to an engineering project. Getting dressed as an Oiran is not something you can do alone. It requires at least 2 people and takes about 2 hours. First, your hair. It's arranged in a style called a shimada, which involves pulling your hair up and back, securing it with a wooden comb, and then decorating it with a collection of ornamental pins called kenzashi. These aren't small decorations. Some of them are the size of your hand, made of lacquered wood, metal, or tortoiseshell, and decorated with flowers, birds, or geometric patterns. A full set can have 20 or more pins. The weight of all this on your head is noticeable. You'll feel it all day. Then the kimono. Not one kimono, several layers. The innermost layer is plain white silk. Over that goes a second layer with subtle patterns. Then a third layer, more decorative. Then the outer kimono, which is the one everyone will see. This final layer is the most expensive piece of fabric most people will ever encounter. It's made of silk so fine, it feels like water, dyed in colors that required rare and costly materials, and embroidered with gold or silver thread in patterns that took artisans months to complete. The whole ensemble weighs about 20 kilograms. You'll be carrying this weight on your shoulders all day. The obi, the wide belt that holds everything together, is tied in the front. This is important. Geisha tie their obi in the back. Oiran tie it in the front. It's a visual signal, a way for anyone who sees you to immediately understand your rank. The obi itself is another work of art, often as expensive as the kimono, and just as heavy. Finally, the shoes. Oiran wear tall wooden sandals called okobo. They're about 8 inches high, supported by 3 teeth, carved into the bottom of the platform. Walking in these is not intuitive. It requires a specific technique, a kind of shuffling step that keeps your weight balanced. You've been practicing this walk for years. It looks effortless when you do it. It's not. Once you're dressed, you're ready to receive visitors. But not just anyone. The men who want to spend time with you can't simply show up and ask. There's a process, and it's designed to filter out people who aren't serious. It starts with an introduction. A man who wants to meet you must already know someone in your circle, another guest you've approved of, or someone from the house who can vouch for him. Without this connection, he can't even send a letter. This keeps out random people who don't understand the social rules of this world. If he has an introduction, he can send a gift. This isn't a casual gift. It's a statement of intent. Fine silk, rare incense, expensive tea, crafted jewelry, something valuable enough to show he's serious. If you accept the gift, it means you're willing to meet him. If you don't, the gift is returned, and that's the end of it. If you accept, he's allowed to visit. But this first visit is brief and formal. He sits in a designated area. You enter, greet him politely, and spend perhaps 15 or 20 minutes in conversation. You're evaluating him the entire time. Can he discuss literature without sounding like he memorized someone else's opinions? Does he understand music well enough to appreciate your performance? Is he respectful without being obsequious? You're not looking for charm. You're looking for someone who won't waste your time. If he passes this first test, he can send another gift and request a second visit. More conversation, more evaluation. By the third visit, if you're still interested, he might be invited to attend a formal event you're hosting. A tea ceremony, a poetry reading, a musical performance. At this point, he's part of your regular circle. He can attend your events, bring more gifts, and continue trying to earn your favor. This entire process can take months. Some men spend years working their way into an Oiran's good graces, bringing gift after gift, attending event after event, hoping to become one of her preferred guests. And the whole time, you retain the power to end it. If someone becomes boring, if their gifts aren't thoughtful, if they show up and monopolize your attention at an event, you can simply stop inviting them. No explanation required. This is the power you hold, not political power, not economic power in the traditional sense, but social power, the power to grant or withhold access, the power to decide who is worthy of your time. In a society where women are expected to be obedient, quiet, and deferential, you get to be selective, critical, and uncompromising. It's worth noting what this is not. This is not freedom. You still live in Yoshiwara. You still work for the house. You still owe money that grows faster than you can pay it. But within these constraints, you have a kind of authority that most women in this era never experience. You can look at a samurai, a man trained to command and fight, and tell him no. You can reject a wealthy merchant whose money could buy entire streets of the city, and they have to accept it because the rules of this world say so. Later in the day, after hours of lessons and preparation, you'll host a small gathering. 4 or 5 men, all of whom have been through the process, all of whom have proven themselves interesting enough to be here. You'll serve tea with perfect precision. You'll play a song on the shamisen. Someone will recite a poem, and you'll respond with one of your own, composed on the spot. The conversation will drift to current events, to new works of literature, to philosophical questions about beauty and impermanence. And the entire time, you'll be performing. Not acting. You're not pretending to be someone else, but performing in the sense that every gesture, every word, every pause is calculated. You're maintaining an image, a reputation, a brand. Because if you slip, if you say something clumsy, or play a wrong note, or show that you're tired, someone will notice. And they'll talk about it. And your status, which is based entirely on perception, will begin to erode. This is your life. It's exhausting. It's also the best version of power available to you in this time and place. So you keep going. Here's something that doesn't make obvious sense until you think about it. You dictate fashion for an entire country. Despite living in a walled district you can't leave. Women in Kyoto, hundreds of kilometers away, are copying your hairstyle. Merchants in Osaka are importing fabric in colors you wore 3 months ago. The wife of a wealthy samurai in a rural province has never met you, will never meet you, but she knows your name because her husband saw a woodblock print of you and mentioned it. You are, in the strangest possible way, a celebrity. The mechanism for this is the ukiyo-e print industry. Ukiyo-e means pictures of the floating world, and it's a type of woodblock printing that became massively popular in the 1700s. Artists create images of actors, landscapes, famous battles, and most profitably, beautiful women. Specifically, you, or women like you. An artist visits Yoshiwara, sketches you during a performance or procession, goes back to his studio, and creates a woodblock print. These prints are then mass-produced and sold across Japan. They're not expensive. A single print costs about the same as a bowl of noodles. This means ordinary people can buy them. And they do. Your face ends up in homes, shops, tea houses across the country. People who will never visit Yoshiwara, who can't afford to even think about attending one of your performances, can still own an image of you. They can study your clothing, your hair ornaments, the way you tie your obi, and then they can try to copy it. This creates a strange feedback loop. You wear a new style of kanzashi, a hair ornament with a specific flower motif, maybe. An artist includes it in a print. The print sells well. Suddenly, craftsmen across Edo are making copies of that kanzashi because women want to buy it. Within a few months, the style has spread to other cities. By the end of the year, it's become a national trend. You didn't intend this. You were just wearing an ornament you thought looked nice. But because you're an Oiran, because your image is being circulated and studied, your personal aesthetic choices become market forces. The same thing happens with kimono patterns. The outer kimonos you wear are custom-made, with designs created specifically for you. These designs are supposed to be unique. But artists copying your image for prints don't always get the details exactly right, or they simplify the patterns to make them easier to carve into woodblocks. These simplified versions then become the basis for mass-produced fabric. So a kimono pattern that was designed as a one-of-a-kind piece for an Oiran gets diluted, copied, and eventually becomes available to anyone with enough money to buy decent fabric. You're setting trends, yes, but you're also watching your exclusive style get democratized in real time. There's an economic engine here that's bigger than most people realize. Yoshiwara isn't just a district for entertainment. It's a major driver of the textile industry, the cosmetics industry, the hair ornament industry, the furniture and decoration industry. Wealthy men bring you gifts, expensive silk, rare dyes, fine jewelry. You wear these gifts during performances and processions. Artists capture your image. The image circulates. Demand for similar items increases. Craftsmen start producing copies. The whole cycle feeds itself. Let's put some numbers to this. Edo in the mid-1700s has a population of about 1 million people. It's one of the largest cities in the world at this time. Yoshiwara employs about 2,000 women, and maybe 200 of them are Oiran. That's 0.02% of the city's population. And yet this tiny group has an outsized influence on what people wear, how they style their hair, what decorations they put in their homes. You're part of a cultural avant-garde that exists in a red light district. It's bizarre when you think about it. But here's the part that makes this complicated. You don't own any of this influence. You don't get royalties when someone copies your hairstyle. You don't earn money from the prints that use your image. Artists might pay the house for permission to sketch you, but that money goes to the house, not to you. You're creating economic value that benefits dozens of industries, but you're not seeing the profits. You're a trendsetter whose trends make other people rich. There's also the issue of control. Once a print is made and distributed, you have no say in how it's used. A flattering print can boost your reputation. An unflattering one can damage it, and you have no recourse. If an artist decides to depict you in a way that makes you look clumsy or unattractive, that image will circulate just as widely as a flattering one. Your face, your reputation, your carefully constructed image, all of it is being reproduced and sold by people you've never met for reasons you can't control. The prints also freeze you in time. A woodblock image made when you're at your peak will continue circulating for years. Long after you've aged out of the profession, long after you've left Yoshiwara, that image will still exist. People will still see you as you were at 25, even when you're 40. There's something melancholy about this. You're preserved as an ideal, as a fantasy, while the real you continues aging, working, struggling to pay off debt that never seems to shrink. Still, the influence is real. When you walk down the street in Yoshiwara, you're not just walking, you're modeling. When you attend a tea ceremony, you're not just serving tea, you're demonstrating technique that will be studied and copied. When you choose a particular fabric or color or pattern, you're making a decision that will ripple outward through the economy. You are, whether you intended to be or not, an arbiter of taste for a nation that considers your profession morally questionable. This is the paradox you live with. You're admired and copied by women who would be scandalized to speak to you directly. You're setting fashion trends for a society that officially disapproves of your existence. You're a celebrity whose fame is both your greatest asset and the thing that makes it impossible for you to ever have a private life. Every choice you make is public. Every outfit is scrutinized. Every hairstyle is replicated. You are always being watched, always being judged, always being turned into an image that other people will buy, study, and imitate. It's exhausting. It's also the only form of power you have. So you use it. Your room in the evening becomes something most of Edo doesn't have. A place where social hierarchy bends. Not breaks, let's be clear. Feudal Japan doesn't break hierarchy, but it bends. And that bending creates space for conversations that couldn't happen anywhere else. Here's the setup. It's late afternoon. You've finished your formal practice for the day. You've been dressed by your attendants in a kimono that's expensive, but not the most expensive. You save the truly elaborate costumes for processions and major events. Your hair is arranged, but not with the full array of ornaments. You look refined, but not like you're trying too hard. This is important. The goal is to create an atmosphere of relaxed elegance, not overwhelming formality. 3 or 4 men arrive. They're not random guests. They're regulars, people who've been through the process of introduction, gift-giving, and evaluation. They've proven themselves interesting enough to be invited back repeatedly. Tonight might include a samurai in his 30s, a merchant in his 40s, a poet in his 20s with no money but excellent taste in literature. On paper, these men have nothing in common. The samurai outranks the others by birth. The merchant outearns them by a wide margin. The poet has neither wealth nor status. In most contexts, they wouldn't be in the same room together. But here they are. You serve tea. Not the highly formal tea ceremony. That's for special occasions. This is casual tea service, the kind that facilitates conversation rather than replacing it. The men settle in. Someone mentions a new play at the Kabuki Theater. Someone else critiques it. You add your opinion, which carries weight because you're known to have good judgment about performance. The conversation moves naturally, like water finding a path downhill. This is where the interesting part happens. In their normal lives, these men are constantly performing deference. The samurai must defer to higher-ranking samurai. The merchant must flatter his customers and show respect to samurai, regardless of his actual wealth. The poet must navigate a world where his artistic talent means nothing compared to his lack of official status. But in your room, during this tea service, the rules shift. They're not talking to you as a subordinate. You're not their employee. You're not their wife or daughter. You're an authority on culture, someone whose opinion matters because you've demonstrated expertise. This changes the dynamic. The samurai can admit he doesn't understand a particular poem without losing face. He's not admitting ignorance to a subordinate or a superior. He's asking an expert. The merchant can talk about art and music without worrying that he's overstepping his social position. In normal society, merchants are expected to focus on commerce, not culture. But here, his interest in aesthetics is welcomed. The poet can speak freely without constantly hedging his opinions to avoid offending someone of higher rank. You're not just hosting a social gathering. You're creating a temporary space where intellectual conversation is valued over social status. This is rare, extremely rare. And it's possible because you exist outside the normal hierarchy. You're not a samurai. You're not a merchant. You're not a peasant. You're something else, something that doesn't fit into the usual categories. And that ambiguity gives you freedom that people within the system don't have. Let's talk about the information that flows through your room. The samurai mentions, casually, that there's been tension between his lord and a neighboring domain. Nothing serious, just political maneuvering. The merchant mentions that rice prices are expected to rise next season because of poor harvests in the north. The poet mentions that a famous artist is visiting Edo and will be giving a demonstration next month. Each piece of information is small, not particularly secret, but collectively they paint a picture of what's happening in the city, the region, the country. You hear all of this. You remember it. And because you host multiple gatherings like this each week, you start to accumulate knowledge that most people don't have. You know which domains are feuding. You know which industries are struggling. You know which artists are gaining popularity and which are falling out of fashion. You don't use this information for anything specific. You're not a spy. You're not trading secrets. But the knowledge itself is valuable. It makes you a better conversationalist, which makes you more sought after, which increases your status. There's also the matter of introductions. The samurai mentions a colleague who's interested in poetry. You suggest he bring this colleague to your next gathering. The merchant mentions a business partner who collects art. You invite him to attend a demonstration you're hosting next month. The poet mentions a musician friend who's recently arrived in Edo. You arrange for this musician to perform at a future event. You're not just hosting conversations. You're building networks, connecting people who wouldn't otherwise meet, creating relationships that benefit everyone involved. This networking has real economic value. A samurai who meets a merchant at your gathering might later do business together. A poet who's introduced to a wealthy patron might secure commissions for his work. A merchant who impresses a samurai might gain access to new markets. You're not directly profiting from these connections. You're not asking for fees or commissions. But you're building social capital. People remember that you introduced them to someone useful. They're more likely to return, to bring gifts, to invite you to perform at their own events. Your reputation grows. But here's what makes this fragile. All of this depends on discretion. If you repeat what the samurai said about political tensions, if you gossip about the merchant's business concerns, if you betray anyone's confidence, the entire system collapses. No one will trust you. No one will speak freely in your presence. Your gatherings will become stiff and formal, and eventually, people will stop coming. So you listen, you remember, and you never, ever repeat anything that could damage someone's reputation or interests. This is harder than it sounds. You're hearing fascinating information constantly. You're learning secrets, observing power dynamics, watching how deals are made and alliances are formed, and you have to keep all of it to yourself. You can't even tell other Oiran because they might be hosting the same men, and any hint that you've been careless with information would destroy your credibility. You are, in effect, a walking repository of sensitive knowledge that you can never use. It's also worth noting what doesn't happen in these gatherings. No one is making official policy. No major business deals are being finalized. This isn't a boardroom or a government office. It's a social space where people talk more freely than they can elsewhere. The actual decisions, the real exercises of power, happen in other places. But the conversations that shape those decisions, those happen here. You're not in the room where it happens. You're in the room before the room where it happens. You're where people practice their ideas, test their arguments, figure out what they actually think before they have to commit in a formal setting. This makes you influential in a way that's hard to quantify. You're not giving orders. You're not voting on policies. You're not controlling markets. But you're shaping the conversations that lead to all of those things. And because you're doing this with dozens of men over months and years, you're having a cumulative effect on the cultural and intellectual life of Edo. You're not just a hostess. You're a node in a network of information and influence that extends far beyond Yoshiwara. And you're doing it while still technically being unable to leave the district without permission. The contradiction would be funny if it weren't so exhausting. Being an Oiran in Yoshiwara means living in the center of a unique cash-driven ecosystem. Forget the modern idea of salary here. The value of your craft is measured in silk, silver, rice coupons, and the sheer volume of gifts that pass through your hands. The basic economic structure hides complicated realities. Who profits? How debts accumulate? Why status opens some doors and forever closes others? Your income is technically an ever-shifting series of gifts, payments for performances, and indirect rewards for your influence. At the top ranks, wealthy guests compete not just for your time, but to impress you with the caliber of their presence. Imported silks, lacquer boxes, rare incense from distant provinces, these are currency. But brands matter too. A hand-painted folding screen from a famous Kyoto artist isn't just a decorative object, but a status symbol for the giver. You accepting it is a win for him. But the true game is not extravagance, it's selectivity. Every gift you return or quietly ignore increases your perceived value. Accepting too many gifts devalues your brand. People talk if you seem too cheap. You learn to play the balancing act. Enough openness to maintain loyalty. Enough selectivity not to waste time. Sometimes you accept a modest gift to encourage hope, knowing the real prize comes later. Sometimes you return something lavish to show you won't be bought by luxury alone. Your financial records are meticulously kept by the house. Everything is counted. Each kimono, each meal, even the musicians hired for salon evenings, all measured, logged, and subtracted from your running total. Genuine freedom, the ability to leave Yoshiwara, can, in theory, be bought by clearing your debt. But clearing debt is not easy. Expenses rise with your reputation. Fashion dictates frequent new costumes. Even a lull in popularity can put you deep into the red. Many Oiran are technically indentured. Their contracts either bought by their families or arranged through an advance payment. Sometimes a particularly successful woman saves enough to buy her own freedom, though this happens rarely. Far more common is the patron arrangement. A wealthy guest offers to settle your debts in exchange for exclusive access outside the district, sometimes leading to marriage, sometimes merely to long-term support. But even these rescues are fraught with clauses and negotiations. The brothel always gets its piece, and stories abound of women leaving one cage for another. Meanwhile, you drive a local economy. The most prominent kimono shops depend on regular orders from the quarter. The tea tradesmen, restaurateurs, hair ornament suppliers, and artists rely on Yoshiwara for sales and inspiration. Prices are set according to your trends. Designs you wear become hot commodities across the city and later Japan. You also leverage economics socially. If you want to raise your profile, you can arrange for a local merchant to sponsor a musical performance and ensure that powerful guests attend and pay generously. If your competition is rising too quickly, you might stage a poetry event calculated to highlight your own strengths and attract a better crowd. Successes at public events drive up both direct income and the flow of gifts from admirers eager to associate with someone at the top. But the showy side hides tough realities. Underneath every festival or gathering, the weight of ever-present debt and the calculation of whose favor is worth cultivating. Most Oiran know women gone from Yoshiwara, not with wealth, but with enough skill and contacts to open a tea house, write poetry for pay, or teach music. The real profit is rarely cash. It's survival, reputation, and the ability to set the terms of your next move. Still, when someone asks about your lifestyle, the dazzling processions, expensive tastes, endless invitations, you have one answer. All of it is possible because you understand the math. You play a long game, balancing status with risk, investment with reward, and reputation with expenses. It's not glamour for glamour's sake. It's strategic, and if you do it well, legacy, not just fashion, will be your ultimate dividend. If outsiders imagine Yoshiwara as harmonious, elegant, or cooperative, the reality inside is far more tactical. The social hierarchy moves in real time. Every guest, rumor, and event can shift someone's fortunes overnight. First, daily competition among Oiran isn't open combat, but a series of precision moves. Reputation is the central currency. Who wore the freshest kimono design at last week's parade? Whose music set a new standard at a poetry assembly? Who introduced a merchant to a samurai and earned new allies? Word spreads quickly. A mistake, a bad mood, even a misplaced compliment can ripple through dozens of houses by the following morning. The numbers show how sharp the game is. Of the approximately 3,000 women working in Yoshiwara in the 18th century, fewer than 200 hold the top Oiran status. Web 155. For these elite ranks, minor advantages, being quoted by a famous artist, receiving a rare gift, or winning praise at a themed festival represent climbing another rung. Senior Oiran control parade schedules, best rooms, first pick of house musicians. But status can slip with the smallest failure. An unimpressive poem, a dull tea ceremony, or a rumor started by a jealous Kamuro. Assistants and junior entertainers keep their eyes open. Who's advancing? Which gifts represent genuine affection versus empty bragging when a senior seems vulnerable? Sometimes new contenders emerge, younger and more creative. The atmosphere is subtly cutthroat. Everyone's watching for shifts in the balance, guessing which alliances and trends might put them ahead. Events are battlegrounds for reputation. When several prestigious guests attend, each Oiran showcases her strongest skill, musical innovation, bold poetic improvisation, or fashion that breaks conventions. Rivalries are not announced. They're played out in whispers, strategic performance choices, knowing glances exchanged in the crowd. The most influential victories are quiet, compliments traded by respected guests, fashions replicated in distant towns, verses handed from one social group to another. Occasionally, competition turns collaborative. Two Oiran combine their talents for a festival, trading poems and music to build mutual fame and split costs. But trust remains thin. Alliances rest on convenience, and as soon as interests diverge, the partnership dissolves. The hierarchy is complicated by social mobility. Merchants, samurai, and even lower-ranked entertainers can change their status with enough luck or skill. A commoner with enough money is received as an equal, sometimes even outsized in influence compared to traditional upper class. Web 155. This means the landscape remains fluid. Today's underdog can, with clever moves, be tomorrow's leader. But power is precarious, and everyone knows it. Guests, sometimes oblivious to these microdramas, come for the spectacle, not realizing the negotiations, alliances, and shifting loyalties behind each graceful performance. Competition can be playful, but it's never absent. The most strategic Oiran use irony, social maneuvering, and honest talent, not just to survive, but to win. In the end, the only guarantee is change. Every season brings new trends, new faces, shifted fortunes. Staying at the top means reading the currents, adapting fast, and never assuming today's victory will last. The stories of rivalry and ascendancy are as much a part of Yoshiwara's history as its art and fashion, all played out beneath lanterns, behind painted screens, and in the echoes of applause that vanish by dawn. In Yoshiwara, you influence more than fashion. You shape the city's rhythm and its unofficial politics. Inside these walls, the rigid social hierarchies of Edo transform. Merchants, samurai, even occasional government officials move as equals, united, ironically, by their desire to impress you or to be seen in the right company. You see them all. Men who would never greet each other in public share sake at your poetry gatherings, and suddenly alliances seem possible. Your evenings are a cascade of information. A merchant quietly worries about next year's rice prices. A samurai inquires about the latest gossip between rival clans, hinting at economic strategies hidden behind festival invitations. A kabuki actor brings rumors about changes in the shogunate's policies. Sometimes you overhear hints of trade deals, shifting alliances, or a new edict that could shake the city's market. You become a node connecting dozens of stories, able to make introductions, steer topics, and occasionally smooth over disputes before they become official. Your role as a cultural mediator is subtle but real. In a world where information equals power, guests know that if they talk to you, their messages reach sympathetic ears. You listen, never repeat dangerous details, and learn to read between lines. Relationships form not just through overt business, but through your poetry, your advice, your ability to navigate the emotions and ambitions of people who can't show vulnerability anywhere else. The ripple effects are wide. Nobles take fashion cues from Yoshiwara. Kabuki scripts echo witty exchanges you hosted. Artists immortalize your expressions in woodblock prints. Beyond that, you see how your words, or even your silence, shift the mood. The city's rumor mill, market movements, and sometimes actual law are shaped right in your salon. People arrange appointments to discuss policy, recalibrate their ambitions, and test new ideas, all orchestrated under the guise of entertainment. You use your influence carefully. Accepting an invitation at the right moment can make a business. Declining a merchant sends ripple effects through his network. Your recommendation for a new artist can launch a career that flourishes in distant cities. The story started in your tea room may fuel months of debate. Governments may never acknowledge you formally, but the smartest politicians quietly try to get your approval for new trends or alliances. When you walk through the city during processions, you see signs of your impact everywhere. Women wear kimonos in your color. Children hum melodies based on your shamisen performances. And merchants adjust storefront displays based on trends you started. Even at festivals and celebrations far from Yoshiwara, people imitate rituals and etiquette you helped set. Despite the walls, you rarely feel isolated. Your decisions influence thousands of people who have never met you. Yet, behind it all, you see the city's contradictions. Your influence is limitless in theory, but in practice, it's bounded by debts, permits, and the daily schedule of Yoshiwara. Your power rises and falls based on fashion, competition, and rumor. You can set trends that cross Japan. You can connect networks that change lives. But you do it all while remaining, officially, a figure outside respectable society. Still, you play the game well. You balance alliances, steer social currents, and use humor and irony to keep tensions low. When guests argue, you redirect with a clever poem. When a festival threatens to ignite old disputes, you invent a neutral theme everyone can rally around. You witness the city changing through your influence, yet you rarely take credit. Like a shadow behind every lamp-lit street, your role remains visible only to those smart enough to watch how the pieces move. It's a strange truth. The more famous you become, the less free you are. At the height of your career as an Oiran, your days are filled with rituals, permissions, and unspoken expectations. The entire district operates under strict control. Officials log every guest, guards track comings and goings, and schedules are set months in advance. Every performance, meeting, and procession requires approval. Even your time for sleep and meals is formalized. Your success means you rarely have private time. You're always preparing, reviewing poetry, perfecting etiquette, discussing the latest city news with juniors. Assistants surround you, constantly helping with dressing, walking, or messages. It feels less like luxury and more like supervised ritual. Even small acts, choosing a song, sharing a joke with an attendant, requesting new tea, are scrutinized for correctness in the ledgers kept by house managers. Financial freedom is an illusion. Everything you own is technically part of the house. The finest kimono, the rarest ink or silk, the gifts displayed in your room all counted against your account. If fashion changes or your popularity dips, your debt rises. The system is designed to keep even the brightest stars under contract. Occasionally, guests offer to buy your contract, promising freedom or marriage. It happens, but more often, contracts are sold and resold. Debt runs in circles. Physical freedom, too, is limited. Leaving Yoshiwara requires formal requests, escorts, and defensible reasons. Celebrations outside, religious visits, seeing relatives all need paperwork, and the risk of refusal looms. When fires or disasters strike the city, evacuation is controlled. Stories circulate about women stuck at the gates, penniless, waiting for permission while the world changes outside. It's not drama, more like bureaucratic exhaustion. Even inside the walls, rules shape everything. Curfews, attendance quotas, limits to how many guests you can receive each week. Any excess, whether too much celebration, an unpopular guest, or a rumor results in penalties. Smaller rooms, fewer invitations, wardrobe cuts, harsher management. Sometimes you see once celebrated Oiran quietly demoted, their presence faded behind newer, younger competitors. But you find ways to bend the system. Small rebellions matter, a witty remark in a poem, a joke at a procession, a favor granted to a struggling Kamuro. Tradition says you must appear distant, untouchable. But your personality, humor, and ironies create connections that rules can't erase. Sometimes you create micro-moments of freedom. A song played late at night just for your friends. A dress chosen just to spark curiosity. A festival theme that slyly critiques the city's elite. The paradox defines everything. You are more visible, appreciated, and influential than almost any woman in Edo, yet tightly bound by contracts and walls. You create meaning that fills houses, sets trends, and even impacts markets. But these achievements offer only fleeting openings to real freedom. For most Oiran, the exit is not dramatic, a slow shift from center stage to side character, from costly parlor to modest tea house. Some return quietly to families or start small businesses. Others simply vanish. What remains is the echo. Guests who still quote your poems, musicians who remember your melodies, young women who copy your style for festivals years after you leave. The city changes, politics shift, fashions fade. But in Yoshiwara, your paradox never disappears. Power, charm, and confinement rolled into the memory of evenings lit by lanterns, crowded salons, and the sharp laughter of a woman who never let her prison mute her wit. You wake to commotion outside, the festival banners are already flying. Yoshiwara is transforming itself for one of its seasonal spectacles. A day when your little district becomes the focus of Edo's restless crowds, and even the most rigid guest protocols dissolve for a while. Festival preparation is chaotic and precise at once. Merchants haul in cartloads of lanterns, rice cakes, sculpted sweets, and sake. Attendants climb ladders to hang strings of paper flowers from every eave, their hands quick despite the clamor. For you, festival days start long before sunrise. Senior managers have selected your ceremonial kimono weeks in advance, weighing the impact of color, motif, and artificial seasonal symbolism. The outer layer is embroidered with cranes for luck, pine needles for resilience, or waves for a touch of social commentary, since festival politics are rarely gentle. Your hairdressers arrive at dawn, juggling lacquered combs and kanzashi pins for the procession. They huddle over branching diagrams of the perfect style, while junior Kamuro girls fetch trays of breakfast snacks you'll hardly have time to taste. Not that anyone eats much at festivals. The real nourishment is attention. Today, instead of the regular press of guests, the streets are thick with tradesmen, samurai and their wives, aspiring poets and curious children, all eager for a glimpse of your magnificence. The gates open at noon, but unofficially, the spectacle starts as soon as the preparations do. Musicians tune their shamisen and flutes in the alleyways. Dancers rehearse comedy routines that, later, will poke fun at the city's elite and possibly at you. Your procession is the highlight, moving through the main avenue, followed not only by apprentices and ward attendants, but by a growing train of merchants, musicians, and poets hoping for your nod. The Akobo sandals are nearly 15 centimeters high today, white silk gloves tight on your fingers for balance. You move in that slow, ritualistic figure-8 step, careful not to trip on the crowd's gifts, handwritten haiku, origami creatures, lacquered fans, and sweets tossed by hopeful admirers. Senior Oiran are escorted at the head of the column. Junior ones cluster near the end, angling for visibility. It's theater that everyone understands is, secretly, also commerce. At each salutation stop, the managers tally which guests linger longest, whose presents are most original, whose greetings are repeated in the crowd. Influential merchants may send so many gifts that they jam the process. Sometimes you feign distraction to keep from accepting something disastrous, or to let a junior colleague recover from an etiquette gaffe. Later, in pop-up tea houses designed for the festival, you're served rare cakes with sweet bean paste, seasonal fruits, and ceremonial tea, all set to poetic performances and impromptu musical duels. It's your chance to watch alliances form and break right in front of you. One merchant who might have feuded over silk prices with his rival 6 months ago now sits laughing, sake in hand, at a clever kabuki sketch based on your rivalry. Outside the parade route, you spot entertainers and vendors mimicking your look-child Oiran with paper obi and painted sandals. Pop-up kimono shops hawking Yoshiwara style to local wives who would never enter the district at night. The city borrows your rituals, sometimes twisting them into jokes, sometimes honoring them with quiet imitation. Just before sunset, you join other senior Oiran at a small festival pavilion, sipping tea and exchanging satirical verses lampooning city officials or poking fun at merchants whose baubles were too extravagant. Irony is the festival's lifeblood. The city's elite play the game of laughter and rivalry as obsessively as you do. By midnight, as the lanterns come down and the crowd disperses, there's a shared fatigue. Managers count coins and measure success by gifts and gossip. Musicians pack away instruments and quietly curse broken strings. You and your friends exchange jokes about the best-dressed dog seen at the parade or the merchant who allegedly wrote 4 different haiku in hopes you'd accept one. Later, you relax in your room, sipping cold green tea with apprentices sprawled on tatami mats, swapping the day's stories. Festivals are exhausting, vulnerable, full of calculation, and sometimes, surprisingly, fun. Tomorrow, Yoshiwara returns to rigid formality and careful accounting. But tonight you fall asleep, knowing that for a few hours, the city itself circled your world. And mass hysteria of trends and fashions surges one step further. Most guests never guess how much daily life in Yoshiwara revolves around food and not in the way you might expect. Yes, there are elaborate banquets for high-ranking visitors. And yes, the ceremonial tea always flows on schedule. But for you and the other Oiran, cuisine is less about luxury and more about ritual, competition, and subtle self-expression. You start the morning before sunrise, snacking quickly on sweet rice balls, onigiri, and strips of dried seaweed, while attendants hustle you into kimono layers and style your hair. Breakfast is always practical, something you can eat standing up with fingers while reviewing the day's events. Junior Komuro girls sometimes sneak toasted matcha shops nearby, know to leave baskets at the back gate for moments of sudden hunger. For major events and processions, your food is both performance and fuel. The brothel's kitchen prepares trays of delicacies, simmered vegetables in dashi broth, lotus root cut in perfect hexagons, smoky grilled eel glazed with sweet soy. Bowls of clear soup appear beside stacks of pressed sushi, always with crisp ginger and vinegared greens for balance. But between formal bites and rehearsals, you slip regular snacks. Roasted chestnuts, steamed dumplings hidden in sleeves, egg custards in porcelain cups decorated with haiku or little sketches from house artists. Sometimes, merchants send rare teas for you to sample with the senior manager. Part taste test, part bargaining ritual. Evening meals, after processions and salons, are quieter. Staff lay out small tables with yudefu, tofu simmered with kombu, pickled daikon, fluffy white rice, slices of persimmon, and delicate sweets made to resemble camellia flowers or pine cones. Conversation is gentle, peppered with jokes, everyone recounting which guest asked for extra sauce or who tried and failed to impress you by bringing a basket of summer fruit in winter. The truth: food in Yoshiwara is a currency, a friendship test, sometimes even a secret signal. Bring plum wine when you want to admit you need advice. Tea rituals underpin everything. For formal encounters, you host guests with meticulous decorum, precise water temperature, whisking powdered matcha to a vivid froth, choosing the right bowl for each season, and offering only 3 sips before delicately switching topics to poetry or city news. Privately, you relax among friends, slurping roasted genmaika, gossiping about apprentice mishaps and favorite street vendors. Apprentices trade recipes, some for secret sweets, others for hangover remedies involving umeboshi, pickled plum, miso soup, and strong roasted barley tea. Favorite foods become legends. There's a story everyone retells about the time you threw a silent banquet where each dish represented a secret wish, and every guest had to guess its meaning before eating. One merchant once tried to impress you with a stack of layered kaiseki dishes, only to have your Komuro girls judge his ginger-pickled mackerel. Too much salt, not enough humor. Dishes appear in poems and parlor games. Write a verse about soba noodles without mentioning hunger. The winner earns bragging rights and occasionally an extra treat from the kitchen. But food is also comfort. After long nights performing for difficult guests or rebuffing tiresome advances, you gather in bedrooms with your attendants, sharing simple bowls of rice and pickled vegetables under a lamp, exchanging stories, laughter, and bits of advice. Meals become lifelines. Snacks stand in for affection. At times, the food reveals the city's wider changes. You notice more foreign spices, pepper from Nagasaki, ginger from Satsuma, Chinese sweets smuggled in decorative jars. These novelties become status symbols, new recipes, new competitions among Yoshiwara's kitchens. And always, behind the scenes, a dozen small rituals persist. Leaving desserts for musicians as a bribe for practicing on cold mornings, trading best rice with junior maids as a peace offering after arguments, slipping dried persimmon into your hairpiece as a lucky token before festival processions. In the end, Yoshiwara's food is not the excess of rumor. It is daily survival, coded communication, private celebration. For you, each taste is a reminder that even in a life measured by luxury, sometimes a perfect bowl of soup with friends is the most valuable currency of all. Change is the one thing Yoshiwara's walls can't keep out. You notice it most in the rhythm of daily life. A new song drifting through the alleys, kimono patterns inspired by foreign traders, or fresh-faced maids whispering rumors about the next big thing. The district was built for tradition, but its beating heart is always chasing novelty. Some changes are slow. The rise of geisha begins at the edge of the city, their music lighter, their attire less extravagant, their reputation built on pure performance rather than spectacle or exclusivity. At first, you see them as upstarts girls with minimal training, daring to entertain samurai and wealthy merchants. But competition creeps in. Geisha weave through the tea houses, collecting stories and customers who used to line Yoshiwara's gates. Suddenly, merchants boast about the sophistication of a geisha's game of Go, as if chessboards matter more than parade routes. You watch the old houses adapt. Some Oiran start emulating geisha and add new tricks, less formality, more humor, more focus on musical improvisation and poetic riddles. Senior managers hire outside teachers for Western etiquette lessons. Festivals subtly shift as imported lanterns and spectacles replace the ritual parades of your youth. Marketplace changes come with technology. You remember when lanterns switched from whale oil to candles, then to kerosene, changing the color and feel of the streets on festival nights. Rumors of trains in Yokohama and new postal routes mean guests arrive from increasingly distant provinces, sometimes with foreign trinkets, letters in unfamiliar scripts, or news about politics and lands you'll never see. At times, you feel the world closing in and opening up simultaneously. Even music evolves. New shamisen tunings, experimental kabuki numbers that blend dance and storytelling, traveling troupes introducing comic sketches that lampoon Yoshiwara's rigid systems. You join the innovation too, collaborating on musical duels, learning new poetic meters, and inventing your own games to gently mock the managers and delight the guests. You sense shifting allegiances, the arrival of new merchant dynasties, the slow decline of faded samurai families, apprentices escaping brothel contracts to join independent theaters. Guests grow younger, more urbane, more critical. The old social codes soften, replaced by codes of fashion, or whatever happens to sell at the stalls outside the district's gates. With each new decade, Yoshiwara reinvents itself, even as nostalgia for the old ways fills every conversation. The parade costumes change, processions grow less solemn, and you spot apprentices gossiping about telegrams and Western operas. Sometimes you wonder if anyone recalls the true meanings behind the symbols you still wear on festival nights. Then you see the same patterns. Elders grumble about too much change. Managers fret about lost profits. But guests keep coming, crowds keep gathering, and every new headline becomes a rumor that some apprentice will expand into a legend before breakfast. And through it all, you perform your own small revolutions, an ironic poem about City Hall, a song with a line borrowed from foreign sailors passing in the harbor, a subtle nod to the future. The face of Yoshiwara shifts, but its heart, you realize, is always halfway between memory and anticipation, a perpetual masquerade, dressed in the latest silk, but never quite forgetting yesterday's parade. Lanterns fade, parade costumes retire, and new decades roll through Yoshiwara like the tide. Yet the memory of your world lingers, sometimes in obvious ways, sometimes only in the faintest shadows cast across modern streets. You see echoes in art, ukiyo-e woodblock prints, once copied with sly exaggeration, now hang in museums and decorate tourist guidebooks. Historians analyze the smile you wore in a festival portrait. Fashion designers resurrect your kimono patterns for runway collections in Paris and Tokyo. Even pop culture heroines borrow elements of your story, the trapped queen of beauty, the paradoxical star in golden captivity. You hear reverberations in festivals. In spring, young women dress in mock Oiran style for cherry blossom parades, giggling in borrowed silk, tying their obi clumsily in the front, daring selfies under lanterns where samurai once whispered. Children learn old festival songs, not understanding the veiled satire, but loving the spectacle. Modern kabuki stages sometimes feature guest Oiran, their lines layered with extra irony or a hidden tribute to the great performers of centuries past. Stories survive in the smallest places. Poets, whether in coffee shops or poetry websites, sometimes reference your verses. Local guides tell tales of the clever Oiran who outwitted a merchant, or the parade dancer who invented a festival ritual. Small businesses in Tokyo hide murals in alleyways, honoring the world of floating dreams, even when the original district is long gone. Your legend, filtered through mass hysteria, is repackaged every generation, a romantic escape, a cautionary tale, a symbol of artistry against all odds. But much of what remains is paradox. You were famous for being seen. Now, you are famous for being misunderstood. The true depth of your influence hides under layers of myth and reinvention. You taught the city how to mix irony with elegance, how to turn strict routines into spectacular games, how to laugh at fate, but in textbooks, you're often just an exotic footnote. Sometimes, young artists search for your real biography in obscure archives, hoping to pull out an authentic line of poetry or a recipe for festival soup. In quiet moments, you look at how that world endures in lantern shadows, in the slow swirl of ceremonial tea, in girls daring to joke about tradition and dream about rebellion. You realize your role as both artist and artifact, your memory, your words, your silk-threaded choices woven through the city itself, always right under the surface. What was power? What was prison? No easy answer now. Guests still chase beauty. Crowds worship new celebrities. Rules invent new cages. Yet the spirit of play, risk, and wit remains. Your era ended, but its echoes shape the theatrics, style, and even the late-night storytelling that keeps the city awake. So, as you drift through the night, perhaps falling asleep to the sounds of distant festival music, mass hysteria rediscovering your legend, once more one last question circles. Where are you listening now? What time is it? History never sleeps. Neither do its stories.